All right. So when you guys hear the word Corona, what comes to mind?
Beer.
Yeah. So a lot of you can just go straight to thinking, you know, like a beer that goes really well with tacos or some carne asada. But maybe some of you guys know it as that town you pass on your way east towards, you know, like Riverside or maybe even Vegas. So today I'd like to tell you guys a little bit about the early history of the city of Corona. And, you know, why would you guys care? I know I didn't, because I originally was born here in Fullerton and grew up in La Habra. But when I found out when I was 8 that I was moving to Corona, I was like, where the heck is that? And you know, having lived there since then, I've learned a lot about the history of the city on my own. But these last few weeks, you know, I dug a little deeper, went to the library, and they have this whole like heritage section that I learned a lot about the city. So I'm going to share that with you. So I'll be briefly describing to you the formation of the city, and then tell you about 2 events, which are the road races and the citrus industry. So first, let me tell you about the formation of what is now called Corona. So after looking at a few displays around the Heritage Room, I found out that the original inhabitants were actually Native Americans called the Luiseno Indians. But when Spain came into California in 1769, they brought along with them a lot of diseases and things like that, or some even were slaughtered. So a lot of the Indians kind of died out. Another interesting thing about that, though, is that the Indians actually would shower every day, or not shower, but bathe every day in like a river that some of you guys, or some of you girls might have gone to. It's called the Glen Ivy Spa down by Corona. So that's pretty interesting. And in 1825, Bernardo Yorba, who was the son of Jose Yorba, who then served in the Spanish army, got granted some land in what is now Corona. And in 1886, Robert Taylor persuaded his friends Adolf Rimpau, not Hitler, George L. Joy, A.S. Garrison, and Samuel Merrill to purchase 12,000 acres of land from the Yorba family, and that's some of the land right there. And they purchased it for $110,000. And they decided to name this area South Riverside after Riverside because it was a successful citrus growing community. And they also contracted a fellow from Anaheim who was H.C. Taylor. And what they had him do was create this street that was a perfect circle. So Grand Boulevard was the original street that was designed by him because, sorry, totally messed that up. It's H.C. Kellogg, sorry. H.C. Kellogg was contracted by Taylor, and this circle street ultimately was used not for, I mean, it wasn't for the purpose of racetracks or races, but it ended up being used for that in 1913 and 1914, and then 2 years later in 1916. And the first race was held in 1913, and it offered $10,000 in prizes, which at that time, you know, was a really big deal. And racing legends like Earl Cooper, Barney Oldfield, and Eddie Rickenbacker and Bob Berman were all some of the drivers that participated in that. So here you see a few of the racers, and this is an advertisement for the first race, and down there you see like the whole setup of the Circle Street. So it's kind of crazy because there's actually like houses in between the circles, so people are going like really fast, like 90 miles per hour around the street, and people are living there. And then some highlights about the races that I like to point out was that Earl Cooper was the winner for the first race in 1913, Eddie Pullen in 1914, Eddie O'Donnell in 1916, but that same year, that last race in 1916, Bob Berman here actually lost control of his car, so he went off the track and ended up killing not only himself, but his mechanic and a security guard that was there. So after that, you know, it was pretty much sealed that they weren't going to be having races anymore, which actually wasn't a big deal to some of the residents because they were already frustrated with the loud noises and the flying tires coming into their yards, so no big deal for them, you know. It was just mainly like all these people that were coming from all over, not only California, but all over the world, to see the races that were kind of bummed out about it, but it actually turns out that they weren't really even that financially successful. So no problem there. So the city of Corona is not only known for its road races, but it's also actually also notorious for its citrus industry. the city of Corona became very successful in growing oranges and lemons. And one thing that I do want to point out is that a lot of the settlers that came in here first had the resources to grow, like they had the money for it, but none of them had experience. So what they did was that they advertised for field work in Italy because they knew that a lot of Italians were really good at growing citrus. So a lot of Italians came down to Corona, and they can be credited for the success in the citrus industry. And let's see. The Preservation Society of Corona shared that in 1913, Corona shipped more fruit all over the world than any other Southern California city. And in 1915, the production of lemons was exceeding national demand, and so local businessmen founded the first lemon exchange byproducts company in the U.S., and the company was eventually sold to Sunkist. So you see there, Sunkist came in and took over and started running those plants. And the plant, which is located on Joy Street, who was one of the founders, produced citric acid, lemon oil, lemon juice, and that actually gave Corona the nickname of Lemon Capital of the World. So as you see, this was all over the city. They prided themselves on the lemons. And so today, I've gone ahead and told you a little bit about the formation of Corona, how it came about, and then I highlighted two events, which are the road races and the citrus industry. So perhaps next time you guys are driving down to Riverside or Vegas, you guys can point out to your friend and say, hey, there's actually some pretty cool stuff about Corona. It's called the Circle City, and now you guys know why. So you guys can go ahead and impress them with the info that you guys learned.
So, Ruby, what did you think?
I thought his intro was really good. He was very enthusiastic, probably the most enthusiastic person yet. And I like how he broke down what he was going to talk about, like the different topics that he was going to be explaining. And I like how he focused a lot on the history of Corona, and also how he didn't really use note cards. He kind of went off the top of his head. So you can tell he really liked the subject. He had a lot of great facts that he explained. The only thing I would work on is like making the transitions more smoother, and also it felt a little bit rushed. So that's it.
Okay. Yeah, I'd echo a lot of the things that you said. First of all, I'll bet most of you, if you were hearing, I'm going to hear a speech about the city of Corona, would have gone, ugh, But I thought you did a nice job making it interesting, finding a couple of interesting points about the city, and delivering it with good enthusiasm. So even if people might have been hesitant to listen to the speech, you did a good job selling it. And that's exactly the kind of stuff you need to do as a speaker. So this is a good illustration. I mean, I know the delivery thing is not our heavy emphasis point right now, but I think that does a lot to make this speech work, is the fact that you are enthusiastic about the topic, you're interested, and even though there might be some things about it that the audience isn't going to find fascinating, you try and make them as interesting as possible, and you sell that really well. I like the joke that you had at the beginning. I thought that was a great way to get people relaxed and into talking about the speech. You identify the topic clearly. On the content issues, I tell you what, I like the 2 points that you're talking about, the historical stuff, and then the two big things that the city is known for. It really feels to me, though, like there's some point missing, that we go to the early history, and then we get the information about the road races and the citrus stuff, and that's kind of where you leave us, almost 100 years ago. I mean, not 100 years ago, but 70 or 80 years ago, and it's like, nothing since. You know,
Right.
and even if there was just a point